Hey everybody, this is Ron from RDS, and today we're going to start with a brand new mix from the ground up. The artist is Clint Reed Davis, and this particular song was recorded a couple years back, but I felt that it would be a great example to showcase what I'm going to talk about today. So I think the whole mantra that I'm going to stress to everyone when it comes to mixing is that the majority of it is about less being more. So with that being said, we're actually going to treat this mix in the fashion of like an older like style of mixing with a lot of summing, some analog summing up here on the buses I've created, which I'll get to in a second, and basically cooking down bigger food groups into smaller ones and managing them that way. So first and foremost, when you're mixing, and when I get things from other clients that have been recorded at home, there's a few things that I look for immediately that really help me in the process of mixing. And number one is how well the session has been curated or manicured or edited and detailed, and that all of the tracks are listed and labeled. You don't realize how many times I get stuff that's like audio 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I treat the first process of getting any kind of mix together, whether it be something I recorded or if it was sent to me from someone else, is that we are going to manicure and kind of prep this like a sous chef per se, and get like these everything kind of like in place. So my first order of business, once the tracks have come in, before I do anything, before I even reach for a plug-in, put anything on a channel, put any effects on anything, I'm going to start by getting a mix with just using the faders and the pan pots to see what I'm listening to, identifying with each individual sounds, like what does the kick drum sound like, what does the snare sound like, the drums, getting a blend of the drums and getting the drums and the bass to work together, the tone and the stereo position of all the guitars, listening to the vocals and the backing vocals. So you're basically trying to get an assessment of everything that has been recorded so you can hear everything and start to build a context on what you want to do with the mix. So the other thing that I would suggest is, a lot of stuff that comes to me has been recorded way, way too hot. And I would emphasize and stress that as you're recording, getting great gain staging on the way in is way more important than, the old adage of like, we'll fix it in post. That should never, ever, ever be the case. Even if you have a 57 and a Focusrite interface, correct gain staging, meaning like how hot you're recording something, the tonality of what you're getting, just by moving the microphone makes a huge difference. Because when you start to add up all these tracks, and if anything is above like -3, when I say that, I'm looking at the right side of the plugin, or the fader right here, the digital VU units over here, and I'm just trying to stress that people record way too hot. Like, there should be plenty of headroom on every single track. That way, when you start putting faders up, that there's nothing in the red. And a really good way to test that is to start your playing your track, getting your levels, and again, nothing above 0 VU over here. You should never have that. If you need any more level, turn something else down, or we can get into the next step, which I'm going to talk about with clip gain. So when you hit play, your 2-bus should look like this. Hang on one sec.
That tomorrow is just a day away. Whoa.
Now, as you can see, like these levels were recorded properly, in which the peak transients are hitting about between -6 and -3 on things like drums. Overheads, I tend to record everything about half of the volume of a kick and a snare or a rack tom, because it just brings up too much of the room noise, the bleed, everything. And cymbals tend to eat everything. So things like a snare bottom and overheads, hi-hats, I tend to cut those about half the level of whatever my high transient items are. Same thing with bass and guitars. If you're hitting everything like you would like going to a tape machine, where 0 VU or +3 is starting to hit that tape saturation, the moment you pull anything up and get your fader set, everything's going to just sound much better. There's not going to be things competing for space and just overdriving your master bus. So what I've already done, and let me backtrack real quick. The other thing that I would say is that I've gone in and clip gained down a few things before I even get to my fader. So if you look at something that comes in the mix and it's already like really hot, using the clip gain feature to bring things up or down is a really good tool to kind of just prep this mix before we even get into it. So, it's a combination of gain staging of the correct recording levels, you get getting a good mix with just faders and pan pots, and then using any other supplemental tweaks via the gain control feature in Pro Tools. So we were just playing that a little bit, and I want to talk about what I've also done here. I'm going to mute what we have on these buses, but this is where I'll start to assign my large foo group buses. Like for the drums, where I'm bussing everything out into an aux track right here. Same thing where we have a bass cab and a DI. I'm bussing those out to a mono channel right here. These are the two clean guitars, which I'm sending to their own bus right here. So the inputs would be 7 and 18. Moving over, we have two other rhythm guitars. It's the same performance with two different mics. So instead of putting plugins on both of these, I'm just going to feed them to another bus right here in which I can treat the bus. So that's the premise of what we're doing. We're sending large groups of things out to buses and treating the buses first before we even put a plugin on anything at this point. So let's segue to the next thing and what we're talking about with processing the bigger foo groups. I mentioned I put everything down to the drums, but right here is the plugin I want to talk about today. This company is Kit Plugins. They're based out of Nashville, and they've partnered with Blackbird Studios in Nashville, which is an amazing world-renowned facility that pretty much has every piece of gear, microphone, console, you name it. It's literally like a museum, just buildings and buildings full of incredible studios and rentals that they have in their warehouse department. So I've been very lucky to go down and work with Kit Plugins on another project that will be coming out shortly. But in the interim, they've been putting out these other plugins that are emulating the consoles and channel strips that they have over at Blackbird. So this one is the brand new one. It is the BB-N73, which is modeled after one of their 1073 consoles. And you can see the basic layout is like what you would normally see for a 1073, which is like the preamp, the EQ, and then this would have been the fader that would, send to your DAW in the recording process. But as soon as you put this on, the premise is that it's simulating running things into these channels. So you can see I don't have any EQ engaged. I have not engaged this feature, which we're going to talk about in a second. But let's A/B between the two and just listen to what this thing does. And all I've done is put it on all of the buses. The drum bus, the clean guitar bus. I'm going to put one on the bass bus right now. So we're basically creating like a virtual console and summing buses with this plugin. All right, so let me just mute this. I'll play a little bit with it on and then off. Now, and again, I've not added anything at all. This is literally just the difference that the sound of the sonic difference it'll make when you engage the plugin right on the channel.
Then tomorrow is
So this
just
is
a
before.
day away.
After.
Remember the time.
So it's even to an untrained ear, the difference is amazing, and we have not even engaged the full capability of what this plugin can do. It's literally just recreating what that preamp and that module sounds like when you pass signal through it. So, and if you looked, there was no additional change in gain whatsoever. So it's not like we're hearing a difference because it's louder. the gain staging and the structure is all the exact same. But I want to talk about like how we can kind of get a little more out of that the sound of the console and what it does. We'll go into the drums first. Here's the drum plugin. So this feature right here, when you hit auto gain and you switch over from line input to microphone input, it is simulating running the signal, the line level signal, through this preamp. And when you add more gain, you could see that the fader attenuates down, so as you're adding signal into the preamp, it's not giving you a hotter output. And they also have this really cool saturation button down here, and it just adds a little more of that signature sound when you really push a Neve console really hard. So I'm going to do the same, where we're just literally going to add maybe 5 dB of level on each one of these. So click to mic, saturation, auto gain, add it like so. We'll just go down the line here real quick. And it won't let you do it unless you change it over to mic input. I'm just going to copy these over because they're all the same now. Okay. So the other thing I want to really go back and backtrack, I talked about all the different food groups of grouping the drums down, the hook guitars, clean guitars, the bass channels. The last thing I do is I always take the outputs of all of those instrument track, whether they're the channels, the multi-track channels, or the buses, and feed them into a stereo aux right here called tracks. And that gives me complete control over the blend of the music and the vocals, in which I can literally adjust, the music underneath and or above the vocal when I need it, just by using this fader. Let's look.
Then tomorrow's just a day away, away. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
All right, so I was hearing, it was coming in, I believe, right here. But usually when you mute this, we shouldn't hear, we're hearing all the different tracks. I don't know why we're hearing that, but we'll get back to that in a second.